Jenny here at the Laundry Garden. Today I'm going to be filling in some gaps in this area by the dragon. We planted this up about 3 years ago, back in April 2022, and it has since matured. I've lost a few plants, but there are a few plants that have flourished as well. Here's one plant that's done exceptionally well, and this is called Heuchera marmalade. Look at the colour of that. And it's just starting to flower as well. And next to it here, this is Sedum Autumn Joy that we'd split from elsewhere in the garden. Doing exceptionally well. It's even produced a baby. And then next to it here, we've got this Achillea Terracotta. It's just starting to throw out some flower buds now. And another plant that's done exceptionally well is this pheasant grass. I do love it. Can seed around a little bit, but my goodness, it works perfectly in this garden. Now, we've recently moved this Persicaria red dragon. It is looking a bit sorry and is in need of a water. It was here where this euphorbia is, and it was getting a little bit too big for its boots. So we've shifted it into the corner where it can get as big as it likes and not encroach too much on the rest of these plants. Another plant that's been very happy in here is this Geum. This is Geum Totally tangerine, and I really love how it gently has these lovely orange flowers that float around the place. And I thought, well, I might just dot a few more just randomly throughout here so that I get these sweet little flowers dancing through the borders. Now, before I get any planting done, I make sure every pot has had an exceptionally good long drink, at least an hour or two before they go into the ground, which gives them a really good chance of getting their roots down and surviving any dry weather like we've been getting recently. I'm going to run through what's going in here, and then I'm going to position them so you can get a good idea of what's going on in my mind on how they're going to look, and I'll talk you through it as well. Because this area is predominantly hot and fiery colours, with it being the dragon area, I've gone for 2 different varieties of heleniums. I'm going to list them just here and pop a picture in as well so that you can get an idea of what they look like. Next, I'm going to be planting some Echinacea. This one's Echinacea Tomato soup, which I can pronounce. Some things I can't pronounce, and I won't try to. I haven't tried this variety before, looking forward to it. And also some Achillea. I like this Achillea Terracotta, and I quite fancy a little bit more on the other side. It performs well here, so I'm going to increase the quantity of them. As I said before, the Geum Totally tangerine will be scattered through here. And you might be wondering what these trees are behind me. These are Acer Griseum, more commonly known as the paperbark maple, I think. And it has a peeling bark, but because these are still quite young, the bark isn't peeling just yet. I've specifically wanted these because of their autumn colour, and they will go into stunning colours of red and bronze, which is perfect for this area of the garden. And they're going to be planted either side in these 2 beds. My thinking with the Acer Griseum is that one will be here where I've put this support, and the other one the other side, and they will frame this area as you walk in and as you walk through as well. Try and imagine as you're approaching the dragon, especially in the winter, seeing 2 Acer Griseums either side here, glowing, on fire, giving you that really exciting feel as you walk towards this space. Okay, this is the fun bit where I put everything into its place and have a look and see how it feels and whether it looks right. Tweak a little bit before I do any decision making or planting. Sometimes I've even placed things and left them overnight and come back to them the next day. just so I can reevaluate and make sure that they're going in the right place. Here goes. Doesn't it look quite different by putting a couple of trees in to give it some height? These will grow fairly slowly, but they won't get too big either. They will probably reach no higher than the wall here, I don't think, and their spread won't be too great either, which feels nice, and they will stay nice and compact in these two areas. I do everything by eye, and I've just looked at different angles to see how well they look. With the rest of the planting, I have kept in mind how well they sit next to another plant and potentially how big they're going to get. So keep in your mind when you're placing a plant its ultimate size. It can slightly overlap another plant, that's fine, but just make sure when you put it in, it's got plenty of space to bulk out. And one thing I always try and make sure of is that no two plants that are next to one another have the same foliage. And what I mean by that is, for instance, this Achillea, its foliage is quite feathery. The sedum here, on the other hand, is quite chunky and slightly different but similar-ish in its colour, but quite different in its shape and form. And then you've got the back here as your bit of a backdrop actually, and your contrast again in colour is the Persicaria. And then we've got our grass, which just floats through everything else. And behind it you've got your geums, which will gently throw out these lovely slender stems with these tiny little flower heads on. So always keep in mind when you're planting how well they're going to marry together, the colour of the flowers, the colour of the foliage, when there are no flowers. If we take a look at where I've positioned the pots, you'll see that I've given them enough space away from each other so that they can grow into their space. Now we can see that we've got a sedum here that's seeded itself. I'm going to move that because I know it'll eventually get this big. And also this one, I'm going to move that too, so that these three can fill this space without the competition of an extra sedum in its way. And then obviously we've got the Acer, but we can bear in mind that this is going to take many years to get its roots down, establish and start to gain height. So all of these plants here will be absolutely fine sitting at its base at the moment. When we originally planted up this area, we did have a planting plan, and there were a lot more grasses in here to add more drama. As the years have passed, I have lost a few. Also, I did have some miscanthus in the two corners here to give it some height, but they didn't particularly like it here. We thought they'd do well, but they had other plans. So I've moved them somewhere else in the wall garden. And I focus now, things have settled in, I can get a better idea on what's performing better and what works and what doesn't. And it just goes to show that you can have a planting plan as a guide, and that will help you decide what to put where. But you can change your mind as well, like plants change their mind. And then you can keep adding and subtracting, because that to me is the joy of gardening and how this garden has evolved. Nothing really stays the same all the time. Plants seed around. Plants don't like where they are, even though you think, or the textbook says that they are going to be happy there. They have other plans. And it's just accepting that even though you think it's the right plant, right place, it might not want to be there. I also think it's really good to dig up and shift plants around the garden that like it in your garden. I have many plants here that have been split and divided over the years that pretty much work well in most of the garden, like the Persicaria, like the pheasant grass and the sedums. And then at least you know you will have a bit of a backbone and reliable plants that will always perform for you. You'll also find a lot of garden designers will suggest that you plant in uneven numbers because it's more pleasing to the eye. So here we've got 5 geums scattered through this area. And then just here, we've got these 3 heleniums. You can also plant in ones, remembering that the plant is obviously going to bulk out. you tend to plant in groups of these so that you get a bigger clump eventually. But singles work well too, like this euphorbia. I planted that because I love the colour of its foliage and its contrast against everything else. I also think you can plant en masse, like around the base of the dragon, and we've just stuffed it with all the pheasant grass, and it works beautifully and adds a lot of drama. It's also worth bearing in mind when you have a hedge not to plant too close to it. And if you look down this hedge line here, you'll see there's a gap that I haven't planted anything in. And that's because of the roots, and it's also a lot drier because this hedge will be sucking the life out of this soil. And that leads me on to watering. All of this will need copious amounts of watering, especially in dry weather, just while they get their feet in the ground, and we don't want them to dry out. I mean, don't drown them, but just don't let them dry out. Now, if you haven't drawn up a planting plan and you've just put plants where you think they're going to look nice, that's great, but put them in their place, think about it, sleep on it even, take some pictures. What I'm going to do now is practice what I preach. I'm going to do a video and I'm going to take pictures of everything I've placed here, and maybe do a little sketch in the house just to remind me on how they're going to look this time next year, and even in the next few months as they start to bulk out a little bit. Well, after a good night's sleep and a ponder on how I've positioned all the planting in here, I've come out early this morning, given everything a really good drink, and now I've just finished planting up here. And while I was doing it, I've made a few more tweaks, because when you actually get in to the border, you start to realise that some things might not work there, or you actually see something you've forgotten you've planted. After taking out the sedums that I've just popped into these pots, I then realised I probably didn't need as many geums as I thought in here, and I wanted to give them all as much space as possible to spread out. I also moved this pheasant grass, which was over here, and I thought it would probably look a lot nicer in between the heucheras and the sedum, and it will establish fairly quickly because it seeded itself around, which means it's happy in here. But on the whole, I now feel everything is happy in its place that I've positioned and planted it in. I've left this area so I can show you how I'm going to plant it all up, and how to plant a tree. And you're probably thinking to yourself, plant a tree? Surely you dig a hole and plant it. Yes, you do, but it's the way you plant it. We're not going to generically dig a hole and put it in. We're going to think a little bit harder. And what we're going to do is we are going to put this tree into a square hole. By planting a tree in a square hole helps the roots to spread out via the corners, which means it will stand a better chance of establishing and prevent the root ball from going round in circles and becoming congested. Once you've dug out your square hole and prepared the ground, just give the base of the hole a little scraping if your ground is quite compacted, so that the roots also have a chance to start penetrating below. Then, if you knock the tree out of its pot and carefully place it in, rule of thumb, do not plant your tree any deeper than the level of the soil in the pot. And the best way to check that is you can just use your spade as a leveler. So just check that, and that is absolutely spot on actually. Before backfilling it, it's always good to stand up, take a step back, check that you've positioned it and it's in the right place again, and that everything's facing in the correct direction. Walk around and then start to backfill it. Okay, that looks good. I also want to check that it looks good alongside the one on the other side. Great, they look really good. backfill it with the soil that I've dug out of the hole. Then I'm going to gently firm it in with my feet, just making sure the soil has gone down the hole. Right, just not too firmly, but enough, because once we water it, that will help the soil move around the base. I've just given it a good drink with a full watering can's worth of water, and then I'm going to top dress all of this once I've planted everything else with the Dundee's spring mix, because that will help lock in the moisture. Normally I wouldn't be planting trees at this, or any planting at this time of year, but sometimes it's great. We get seduced by plants, don't we, when everything's flowering. Plus, in some parts of the garden, it's nice to fill in gaps as well. And these are going to fill this gap beautifully. Before I start planting up in here, I want to show you something with the geums. Now here's a pot, a geum, here. This one plant here is how big it's going to get, which of course is at least double this size. So always keep that in mind when you're putting these things in the ground. All of this is 3 geums, and here I'm going to plant 3 more just behind with a different plant in the middle. So the plant in the middle, I've got the euphorbia here, and then running towards the front, I'm going to plant a group of these, which is the Helenium Moerheium Beauty. I'll give you a quick look from above on their spacing again to give you a good idea, and then I'm going to get them in the ground. They're literally going to go in straight in to their level. If you find the roots are a little bit compact, just tease them away with your fingers like so. Here are 3 spaced out, and just over there are another 3 spaced out. There, there, and there. And then that'll tie in really well with the spacing of these. So I'll have this group, and this group. And then in the middle, I'll have the heleniums. Done. Everything has gone in, planted, and top dressed. I've left the odd pot around just to remind me of the name of the plants, because I'm going to make sure I remember what has gone where. Looking very tidy. It's amazing the difference just filling in the gaps with a few plants can make, and then the top dressing. I'm really going to look forward to watching all of this slowly fill out throughout the rest of this year and years to come. The geums dancing through the borders and all the later flowering echinaceans and heleniums. It's going to look wonderful. The height as well of the Acer Griseums will be magnificent in many years to come. Something I look forward to progressively watching each year on year. And the autumn colour as well, something I can't wait to see. Next week I'm going to be planting up 2 great big terracotta pots inside the walled garden, and I'd love you to come and see how we get on in there. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.